Greetings and salutations on beautiful people. It is another episode of League Unlocked. My name is Eric Flyin. You know, I'm solo. I'm Millennium talking today for a little bit of weekend recap action of the big boys on the Rift, and kind of a theme across most of, if not all, the four major regions is we're getting a bit top heavy. And a little bit of a mystery sloppy Joe kind of scenario in that middle to bottom tier, and did not think that would be the LCK, or the case for the LCK, especially with the teams that are sitting at the top, as yet again this weekend we were proven that GenG are in fact mortal beings on this earth, as it is Hanwha Life being the latest to slay them on the Rift, and to slay them in 2-0 fashion, much like Diva Kia did last week. 3 series losses, 2 out of the last 3 for GenG, and again, like 3 series losses for most teams is no big deal. That's usually what GenG has total across 2 entire splits, and here we are 3 weeks in, and they have that many losses. So yes, it's still very much question mark city for GenG. Things just still feel a little bit off, even if Chovy has some decent performances. He had terrible performances in comparison to what Zeka was doing on the day. The Aurora game was great out of him, but the Yone game was like world championship Zeka 2022 kind of form. Gumayushi starting to warm up. Zeus absolutely dominated as well, which is surprising for, of course, Mr. Keen, who is Mr. Consistent. Kanavi is that carry Kanavi kind of form, and really this series, more so than some of the other GenG ones, is just full praise, at least for me, for Hanwha Life continuing their torrid pace at 5-1 now, and sitting atop, near atop that LCK standings. But it's all check marks, green lights for Hanwha in terms of individual performances across the board, and then the collective 5 of them, the team fighting was on point. It's not even red X's or anything for GenG right now. It's mainly just question marks. You're going, wow, how did that happen? I'm still expecting them to turn things around for playoffs, but that is, of course, dependent on this whole this ruler tax evasion thing carrying over into best of fives, having an impact. We, again, don't fully understand what actually is going on behind the scenes. I say they're near the top in terms of Hanwha Life because, of course, we still have the perfect KT roster waiting for that down game where they completely disappoint, but they play a bottom tier squad in the DN Supers, and they completely dumpster them. Like 2 kills away from double perfect gaming them. Like, these were the most dominant 2 games the KT has had all split, and of course, yes, it's DNS. It's not really that big a deal, but the fact that it's just this level of consistency out of BDD, or out of KT roster, we know it's there for BDD, but perfect is like, I mean, you're sliding this guy in top 3 performing top laners right now, especially with guys like Keen and Doran maybe not playing at the highest peaks that we've seen out of them. Perfect has been an absolute animal and racking up solo kills basically non-stop on the Rift. So very, not going to use the E word, but very impressed with KT roster. And I think Hanwha being near the top is not a huge surprise, but getting the LCK starting to teeter towards that kind of top-heavy side of things with Hanwha and KT being the squads at the top of the table is definitely surprising so far. It was a disaster avoided for T1, matching up against Kiwoon Dragon X. I'm still trying to figure out how to say that name properly, but Faker, old reliable, is the one who kind of leads the way in this series against KRX. Had a great Twisted Fate game and then a vintage Azir game. This is coming fresh off the heels of his not so pretty Aurora performance, but you saw a little bit of the chaos playing on a knife's edge that we see out of T1, but at the very least they were on the same page today. If someone's flashing in, going in, it wasn't alone, it was with the rest of the boys backing them up, and Good to see T1 now get to this log jam of 3-3 squads with GenG, D plus Kia, and T1 all sitting at that record. Even Nongshim at 4-2 is better than those 3 squads, which seems like a bit of bizarre world that we're existing in when you're talking about Nongshim ahead of them. I don't think most people think they're actually better, even right now in current underperforming levels for both GenG and T1, but still credit to them, and that's just very much where this mess of the middle is right now in the LCK. Obviously, we need more games to separate. Eventually, Hanwha, I believe, is going to have the real test of a T1 rematch and KT on the Rift. So it's a waiting room for KT versus Hanwha to see who the true top dog in the LCK is right now, at least in the regular season. The LPL's getting messy in the middle as well and getting top heavy with 2 squads, as it was a weekend of Invictus Gaming coming crashing back to reality as they matched up against both Top Esports and Billy Gaming, and there was some pushback, especially in the BLG series, but very much showcasing that the 3-0, which then quickly became 3-1 with a bad loss to Weibo, I don't want to call it an anomaly, but not a fully accurate representation of the power level of what IG's putting. Even with Reynard playing well in that mid lane, TES, the more dominant win over IG and the more well-rounded, as everybody, even the rookie Jueon, who we saw show up big against Bin and BLG, continues to be a highlight, and Top Esports, like, hitting the ground running to this level is still most definitely a bit of a surprise, immediately contending, ascending into that number 2, bordering on 1B squad in the LPL. BLG, great signs, bounce back from that Top Esports loss for them to get not just the win against IG, but they also got a even more convincing win maybe against anyone's legend, who continue to look far removed from that 2025 best team in the LPL, at least internationally level. We have yet only seen the smallest glimmers, shades of hope of that level, and hope was not it on the series against BLG, but got to finally see. Now, first and foremost, Knight continues to be at an absolutely insane 1v9 level. This Syndra the LeBlanc game, even the one that BLG lost against IG, Knight was he's like 7-1 on this LeBlanc, almost single-handedly getting this team back into the series. But we got to see some pop-off performances out of Viper on. We saw an Ashe game last week that was pretty solid, but the 2v2 of him and On comes up big for the Varus, and I think, at least in my eyes, hands down, far and away, the best individual carry performance that Viper has had since he's been on BLG was that Xayah game that he had against, I believe that was the AL series, yeah. Carried the game for them. Knight finally gets a little bit of help. Jhin has still continued to be pretty big, but still the biggest point for BLG is Knight playing at an absolutely insane level, like, I think pretty easily the best mid laner in the world right now, with GenG in a little bit of a slump. Knight fully taking that mantle back from Chovy, at least for now. Still early in the split and at internationals, blah, blah, blah. But seeing Viper play it a little bit better makes you feel a whole lot better against Billy. And again, with AL playing like this, IG coming back to earth, JDG having a slow start, it's the same theme of you've got BLG and Top Esports, you feel great about both of them, and then it's a bunch of middling tier that it's kind of hard to rank the rest of these LPL squads, much like the middle pack of the LCK. We obviously just need more games under the belt to really start grading what's going on there, but it's a surprise, to be sure. You can throw in JDG and AL alongside. Maybe not as big a surprise as GenG and T1 being at the level that they are, but still. Absolute mess in the middle over in both the LCK and the LPL. It's a little bit less of a mess in the LEC, as there's still a pretty confident, consistent top 3. Maybe you could even extend that out to top 4. We finally got to check the power level of the only undefeated team, Giant X 4-0 coming in. You heard both Mark and I and pretty much everybody else who watched any of the games with a pretty big tentative, yeah, but they got to play somebody good before we're feeling actually positive about Giant X. They match up a bit against both Navi and Vitality on the weekends. The Navi series was close until it wasn't. I mean, they dominate the first matchup, but then Rylesh and the rest of the boys, an insane Zahen performance. I think he finished with 13 kills and 0 deaths, a quadra kill to his name, and carried that momentum into a starter of all picks in the third game for a guy who we're used to playing carries for Navi. But he had an insane gank to get Zombie and Paris ahead, and they just completely dumpstered Noah and Jun. The Lucian and Milio combo absolutely putting them in the dumpster as Navi bounced back to dominate them twice. Again, moments where they pushed back against Vitality and their other series, but it was pretty convincing. And again, it was the bot lane of Carzzy and Fleshy this time, kind of embarrassing Noah and Jun. So not a great weekend for the bot lane. Nako picks Quinn and has the least impactful Quinn performance. Says, I'm convinced that Renekton purely exists as a top lane pick for people to cook up some spicy counters. Obviously, we've seen the Vayne become more and more prominent on the top lane. The Quinn has not been picked yet, but Nako didn't even get a massive lead, but he takes so much pressure now as the solo kill king of EU that you get to see Humanoid maybe feeling like he doesn't need to do as much as he did on that Fnatic roster. He's still getting caught out and having suspect moments, but we're still seeing the mechanics and playmaking capabilities of Humanoid come through more and more often on this Vitality roster as they bump up to 6-1 to stay atop the LEC standings. Giant X are still at 4-2, but very much kind of now entering that gatekeeper playoff status where you must be this good to make top 6, and Giant X are kind of that height measurement to get onto the roller coaster of LEC playoffs. And that's even with squads like G2 coming away with the least convincing 2-0s that you could probably imagine against both SK. The SK one a little bit different than Shifters. Shifters have looked pretty horrible in this split. So G2, yes, they win 2-0, but it is sloppy from start to finish. And even the SK one, SK, if they play things cleanly, are at least winning a game in this series, maybe even winning the whole series. But we get a pentakill out of Caps, who had maybe his best individual performance, but the rest of the squad, you were kind of going, okay, where's this international Broken Blade that we just got at first stand? He has yet to show up on the domestic side, and there's a lot of question marks about G2, but as we've said so many times before, the runway is so long for this team, and they're picking up wins. I know 1 and 2 was a little bit of a dicey start, but back-to-back 2-0s puts them at 3 and 2. Talk to me, give me a call when they are legitimately at jeopardy of missing playoffs, because I think even as we did, even at 1 and 2 versus a 4 and 0 Giant X, you pit those two squads against each other in a best of, you'd be absolutely insane to not be saying G2 is the better squad. We also had Koi have an even much more convincing 2-0 against Heretics than G2 did, and Koi were winning these games. It was like 3 kills to 1 for 25 minutes, far and away one of the lowest kill games of the entire LEC year, let alone split, but they were still dominant. Jojo looked great on the Yone, and Koi has also kind of had a slow start. That's just been a theme across the LEC, is these guys kind of having some slower starts, but Koi absolutely looking fine in their matchups. We've got a lot of the road shows that'll be coming up. I think like 2 out of the last 4 weeks are going to be the road shows hosted by KC and Koi, so finally going to get a whole lot more games out of them on the Rift, as Vitality has pretty much done all that they can do. They've played almost, if not all, of their marquee matchups against the big squads, and they've beaten Koi, they've beaten G2, they maybe could have, would have, should have beaten Carmine Corp, even though it was competitive. So It's basically just riding it out against some of the lower tier teams and hopefully maintaining their form, as I believe they only played 2 more series over the last 3 weeks. They weren't invited to some of these road shows, which is their loss because obviously Carzy, Humanoid, and the boys are the most fun and entertaining team to watch both on and off the Rift. So we're going to have to find some other ways to get our daily dose of entertainment if the Vitality boys are not going to be on the Rift. LCS side of things, we got to bring it home. Wrap it up with the same theme of it becoming a top heavy league, and I think this week we clearly and definitively saw the top 3 forming out as the darlings of the lock-in tournament disguised are quickly maybe looking like the weakest team in the league again, which is a little bit of what feels bad as Cloud9 kind of dumpstered them, even if they had some whoopsie moments. APA, we get the Annie and the Cassiopeia. I'm not super confident in either of those picks based on the performances this weekend. I know we've seen him play Cassiopeia before to a pretty high level, but it was more about the bot lane for Cloud9 and Blabber having standout performances, and APA, maybe his keyboard, the real MVP, for definitely getting in Call Me in some of the guys' heads with a little bit of all chat banter. But this series, never really in question, the most dominant one of the weekend for sure, as Cloud9 stays perfect at 3-0. Lion also had a 2-0 on the week as they step up to 2-1, but it was not nearly as big a dumpster as that Cloud9 versus Disguise series was. Shopify absolutely had some pushback. They were in the driver's seat for some of these and looked like they honestly might run away with game 1 as Contracts got an insane lead early on the Pantheon. Probably got 2 fed as B-Voice Corky, I think he had 6 or 7 assists at some point and no kills. If he had a few kills, maybe it would have been easier to come back, but Berserker was choosing violence on the series. Absolutely the standout individual performance. We'll throw in Isles there as well because he had some nasty Seraphine engages, but the Yunara game, we finally saw moments or an entire game of that old MVP Berserker aggressively flashing to dodge skill shots, going under turrets, knowing what his limit testing is to take over some of these games for Lion. Saint did the same as well, but feeling much better about them. It started slow, but they ended up closing out this series in strong fashion again to move to 2-1 and keep pace with the other top dogs. Now, when you're looking at the bottom of the LCS, I think Dignitas was the easy lock to put in there, but now we got back-to-back weekends where they play a competitive 3-game set against Lion, win a game, and you're going, well, that was just bad out of Lion, surely. That's the only reason. But then they play a competitive 3-game set against Team Liquid. FBI and Ignar play pretty well. Photon is trying to drag this team kicking and screaming into playoffs in the LCS. Had a solid series overall out of Yon on the Rift. Yon and Core JJ and Jose Dioto for sure. Morgan, a bit of a Passions or Princess. And Quid, not a great series, if we're being honest. In a matchup against Palafox that you would expect the former MVP to completely steamroll his way and run away with this matchup. The Aurora game was 0-5 at one point, and a lot of these fights ended up basically being a 4v5, where Yon had to do some of the heavy lifting in team fights. So yes, still very much waiting for Quid to wake up here in Split 2 in the LCS. But Team Liquid, in case you couldn't guess, obviously still that third team in that 3-headed dragon at the top of the LCS right now. And despite, only like 3 series for most of these squads, you're already clearly seeing that separation. You can argue TL or Lion, who you're feeling better about right now, with Cloud9 probably as the clear number 1 in the LCS. Maybe the most disappointing series of the weekend is the only one we haven't talked about, and that is FlyQuest versus Sentinels. This was supposed to be so who's the legit, I don't want to say dark horse, but next man up to push into that top 3. I thought it was FlyQuest's time to step up. Sentinels looked like they were still feeling the effects of a horrible America's Cup performance, but They bounce back. Another back and forth series, positives and definitely negatives out of both squads. But Sentinels in that third game. Listen, Rahel has an impeccably clean Kaisa performance. We see impact on maybe his most iconic pick in the Shen, and some fantastic who he engages on the Rel. So mostly positives that you could talk about for Team Sentinels, but a little bit of a fall back. One step forward, two steps back for FlyQuest. Griffin didn't have a great set, and you would think after how good he was in their last matchup, you were expecting him to maybe give it to Hambach again, but it's a classic case of, are you more praising Sentinels or discrediting FlyQuest? But really what this series did for me is prove that neither of these squads look ready to be that next squad to step up, and none of the other 5 teams in the LCS do. But listen, let's not be greedy as a region, North America. If we can have 3 teams that we're feeling okay to good about, somewhere within that spectrum. I'm not even going to say great about any of them because we're so early and we have a precedent already here in 2026 set from the America's Cup and to a lesser degree Lion at first stand. But if we can have 3 teams that you feel good about, you can't ask for more than that. Even if you're not going to have 3 going to the World Championship, maybe CBLOL takes one, maybe you're not going to feel as good about them come Worlds. Maybe we can have 2 that we feel okay about heading to that mid-season invitational. But really, I think all of these standings could completely change. And even if the standings stay the same, whoever steps up in playoffs from the LCK, LPL, LCS, LEC, it all might be very different than how these regular seasons standings play out. Like KT could go undefeated for a while, only to get upset in playoffs. Same thing for Vitality. It's kind of these unexpected squads sitting at the tippity top of the table, and the more established and expected great teams are going to awake from hibernation when playoffs do roll around. But at least in the short term, for the time being, let's just enjoy the change, the shuffle that's going on around all 4 of these major regions. But that is it today for League Unlocked. My name is Eric. Thank you to all you absolutely gorgeous individuals for hanging out, supporting us as always, and we will catch you on that flippity flip.